All right, hey guys, welcome to my updated Ayaka guide. Today we're going to be going over Ayaka's best teams, best artifacts, best weapons, etc. Everything all in one. Just a very all-around video. And as always, if you have any questions about Ayaka guide, just ask me live on twitch.tv/Sekapoko. Number one most useful thing about Ayaka when playing open world. You're running out of stamina, end your dash, press E, and stand there. And then dash again. Alright, so Ayaka is a character that a lot of people want, and she's one of the best characters in Genshin for DPS. She's either the best or second best cryo DPS, depending on how you look at things. And of course, is best friends with Shenhe because they're the best pairing that I can think of for cryo. If you don't have it for the cryo waifu squad, you probably should say for Shenhe. For Ayaka, just for basics on her, number one talent priority is going to be Elemental Burst, not how I've done it here because I did this for the memes because I have a C6 Ayaka. You do not need C6 Ayaka, she's great at C0. For a C0 Ayaka, the number one talent priority is going to be for Elemental Burst, second talent priority being Elemental Skill up to talent level 9, and of course, the least priority is going to be your normal in charge attacks. This is going to be the lowest priority for every C0 Ayaka. I have it flipped because I wanted to see how hard a C6 Ayaka would hit. So for Ayaka in general, we have a lot of weapon choices, and for a DPS breakdown of weapons, about a year ago, I put out a video on Ayaka's best weapons and the overall weapons for her, but for the best weapons in general, for her, we actually did a full DPS showcase on everything. The only changes to this tier list that I would make, the only updated weapons that we have are Haran. I made a video about Ayaka on the Haran with the brand new set, and I have talked about this, so if you want to check that out, link to the videos that we're talking about in the description below. There aren't too many changes for the Ayaka weapon tier list as far as what the best weapons are concerned, but I would say that the only thing I would actually change on Ayaka is the Jade Cutter. The problem with the Jade Cutter and the Haran, which would be able to be in the same tier, are they are crit chance weapons, and crit chance weapons are a little bit more problematic, but you can use an emblem set to abate some of the concerns. Best weapons for Ayaka, the Mist Splitter being the best weapon, the free-to-play trope choices options, just to be very, very easy. Of course, for the Adamono Kakaguchi, as well as the Blacklift Longsword. If you are looking for other weapons, of course, Jade Cutter can be fine, as well as the Haran. But if you are looking for the other weapon that you can use, the last weapon I would choose to use on Ayaka would be the Skyward Blade. For alternate option weapons, the other two weapons that we can talk about are Alley Flash as well as Black Sword. Both of these weapons are kind of problematic for Ayaka because they either have Elemental Mastery, which is not necessary for Ayaka, even though it's a very small amount, and the Black Sword, which is a crit chance weapon, where Ayaka is not really a crit chance character, and a normal charge attack boost, but she's mostly Elemental Scale and Elemental Burst based, so these weapons are not the best for her. Lastly, we have Aquila Favonia, which is a good stat stick weapon for getting you a high base attack, while also getting a lot of attack percentage on the side. So the other thing about this weapon is it's very good for healing for Ayaka, because she's going to be out on field, but it will probably not be the better option than using an Adamono Kakaguchi or by using a Blacklift Longsword. If you had to choose between a Blacklift Longsword and an Aquila Favonia, my thought was you be using Aquila Favonia on Bennett and using the Blacklift Longsword on Ayaka. For artifacts for Ayaka, Ayaka has a total of 4 different artifact compositions that you can run. The optimum choice, of course, is going to be the Blizzard Strayer set. And when you're going for a Blizzard Strayer set, you're going to want to shoot for about 40% crit chance and about 300% crit damage as far as the maximum what you can get. Unfortunately for my Ayaka though, I just don't have those artifact rolls because I typically just don't farm cryo domain that often, and I end up getting a lot of crit damage, plus I like doing showcase builds because it's more fun. Now for energy recharge for Ayaka on artifacts for stat lines and everything you want to go for, this is a more complicated topic that I'll be going over a little bit later in this video. Next sets that would be really good on her, of course, are the Emblem of Severed Fate set, which can actually improve your elemental burst damage by up to 75%, which is usually about 50% depending on how much energy recharge you give on Ayaka. Now this set is actually very, very good if you're going to be using a Jade Cutter on Ayaka, or if you are using or the Skyward Blade. If you're using Jade Cutter or Skyward Blade, this set is actually very, very good for Ayaka, so this is a recommended set in that direction because you'll get enough energy recharge to maximize the sets or have enough crit chance to actually offset the Blizzard Strayer crit chance. The third set for Ayaka, of course, is the Haran's, is going to be utilized with a Haran or a Black Sword, kind of on a normal attack build with the Echoes of the Offering set. This set is not an ideal set. It does work. It's just not really an optimum set. It's just one of those sets that you can use as an alternate build, and it is kind of fun by using it with Yunjin or using it with either a high Constellation channel or a low Constellation channel, depending on what you have and how well you're playing. And the last set for Ayaka is going to be a mixture set between 2-piece Blizzard Strayer as well as a 2-piece Gladiator set in order to optimize the Melt Ayaka build. And these sets I don't really find to be a very, very good set for going for a Cryo and Gladiator set, because Ayaka does have a lot of split damage, so you don't want to go for just Elemental Burst damage or whatnot. You would want to go for a kind of a split set for a Melt Ayaka, because you're not going to be melting on all the other hits. You're going to be melting basically on Elemental Skill, not really on Elemental Burst or Charge Deck. Going into energy recharge for Ayaka. So energy recharge on Ayaka actually depends a lot on the supports you're going to be using for the team. So when looking at energy recharge on her, typically for Ayaka, you want to shoot for about 130% energy recharge on her while going up to about 160, depending on exactly what team composition you're using. Now the easiest way to look at an Ayaka team is to say, hey, what is the best energy recharge? Is to focus on one weapon, and that weapon is going to be the Sacrificial Bow or the Favonius Warbow. Either of these weapons will actually change the amount of energy recharge you're going to need for Ayaka by a significant margin. The reason that you're going to have different energy recharge amounts is because when you use a Sacrificial Bow or a Favonius Warbow on a character like Diona, or whatever character you'll be using for a battery in her team like Venti, you're going to need significantly different amounts of energy recharge. I'd say that if you're going to be using a Favonius Warbow as well as using a Venti on your team composition, about 130% energy recharge is sufficient depending on what you're going to be using. If you are going to be using less than that, you're going to need closer to 150 or 160 energy recharge to keep your Elemental Burst up on rotation, which is kind of problematic to do. So just know that if you are looking, it depends really on how much Favonius you're going to have on your team, as well as how much, if you have Venti or not have Venti. Last thing that's going to determine exactly what you're going to be using on your Ayaka for energy recharge is going to be how many cryo characters you're going to use on the team. With the introduction of Shenhe, you're able to use a lot of different characters that are cryo on the same team. And because you can do that, Ayaka's energy recharge actually ends up becoming much lower as far as the necessary value that needed, because you'll have extra characters generating energy particles. And if you end up using 3 characters that are cryo on one team, I recommend about 130% energy recharge for those builds. Okay, so for forwards for Ayaka, there's a lot of characters in Genshin that you don't want to use and a lot of characters you do want to use. Venti, Diona, and Mona, it was the old Morgana team, which everybody was using, but the new team is going to be Kokomi, as well as Shenhe and Kazuha, as far as the best possible team. Now, the reason this is the best is because you can actually utilize a Millilith set on top of your Kokomi, as well as using a Noblesse set on your Shenhe, or using a 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Shimanoa / any of the other attack percentage sets. Now, by using 2 separate attack percentage boosting, you can actually get the maximum boost over to the character Ayaka, which gives you a total of 40% attack from set bonuses that you can receive, plus the extra 48% from Kokomi, so you get more than enough attack from that direction. Now, this also allows for Kazuha to give your elemental boost, which will then boost the Shenhe, and the Shenhe will boost the Kazuha, giving the team the best overall synergy. The reason that Kokomi is a better character than Mona has everything to do with hydro application and team composition adds. So if we look at the characters between Shenhe and Diona for other old compositions, Shenhe is going to provide a significantly higher damage value than Mona and Diona put together, and the character Kokomi is going to provide the healing for the composition while also providing the best hydro application on field. For the C tier, for the characters for supports, you don't want to use any characters on this list with Ayaka, because these characters don't really have anything to bring to the table with Ayaka, and they typically are not very good. For anything in the B tier here, these are all characters that can work with Ayaka if you really don't have any options and you don't have anything in the A tier. These are all like, hey, I don't have the A tier replacement character. These characters are like the character I have to use because there's no other option. So these are the you have to use it because there's no other thing to do. For other builds for Ayaka, there are, of course, going to be the A tier characters here, which are going to be Jean, Klee, Zhangling, Xingqiu, Yoimiya, Yunjin, as well as Raiden Shogun, Zhongli, and Eula. Now, if you were wondering about the last 3 right here, as far as why these 3 are really good with Ayaka, these 3 with Ayaka is actually a team composition, so just that's why this is actually here. I've done it before many a time. It's actually pretty good. Yoimiya is here because Yoimiya actually has really, really interesting reactions with Ayaka that you'll see from this clip here that I'm posting, and you'll see that the reactions between the 2 characters, it's really, really interesting to watch. Zhangling and Klee, as well as Jean, can all be used in different types of Sunfire compositions with Ayaka, which can work, and they actually do pretty well in Abyss, but are not really optimal teams. For the more semi-optimal teams, you're going to be using characters like Sucrose, Bennett, Ganyu, Kaya. In fact, one of the most interesting things about Kokomi right now is that Ayaka is the 3rd most used unit in the Spiral Abyss because she's so freaking good, but Kokomi is a higher usage rate because she's really good for Taser comps and other compositions in Genshin, and if you have Kokomi, you're typically using her in this Abyss because she's insane for utility. So when utility is concerned and you're looking for the best utility character, that's going to be Kokomi for, of course, Ayaka. Ways, of course, of manipulating C1 Mona, of course, they get all really high damage values. And of course, this is still a very good team. But, you know, the better team, of course, if you can get all the characters, is going to be the Kazuha, Shenhe, and Kokomi team. Now, if you're wondering about this list of characters, we actually talked about this for about 4 hours with a bunch of people on the stream, and a lot of people put in their input to give the best characters for supports for Ayaka, depending on what you can use. And it was pretty widely accepted across the board for a lot of people. So if you're looking for like different information on where characters lie with Ayaka, this is probably the best information for people that actually want to put their input from large sources. The other character that people are going to ask about is going to be Xingqiu, and Xingqiu as a character deserves to be in a lower tier than all the other characters here because Ayato has a much better Hydro application. And the problem with Xingqiu on a Ayaka team is that Ayaka is not really a normal attacker, and what happens with Xingqiu, in order to apply the rain swords and actually use the rain swords, he ends up not being able to get the attacks in. Alright, Xingqiu is a great character, but not with Ayaka because of that reason, and because the single target rain swords are not going to be hitting all the time on a lot of different targets. He's able to only really apply Hydro while being in the middle ground of everybody. So if a character like Ayato is actually now in the mix and actually utilizes his elemental burst in order to keep the Hydro application up on multiple targets, it makes it a little bit better. But typically the other problem with Xingqiu is that a freeze composition character on a single target DPS setup is not really the best, because when you're looking at single target damage that you're going to be dealing, the only time you're really going to need single target damage from Xingqiu is when you're fighting a boss. And if you're fighting a boss with Xingqiu, you're typically not freezing. So that comes into the mix. Then Xingqiu is not really the optimum character to be used in that situation. There are much better characters, because you wouldn't using a Hydro character, you'd be most likely using a Cryo character. Now looking at Constellations on Ayaka, C1 is completely trash and it's completely worthless. Everybody saying it is good is completely lying to you. There is no way this is ever good, because you don't spam normal attacks. Even on a normal attack build, this is never going to be good enough. Next up, we have C2, which is going to be a very decent upgrade to Elemental Burst for Ayaka, because it basically adds a 40% damage boost to your Elemental Burst, which is a very strong upgrade. Now, as far as a Constellation add, if you're looking at that, it's basically 20% per Constellation, so it is a pretty big upgrade for Constellation. Not better than what we'd like, but it's okay. C3, of course, will provide extra damage from the Kamasusu Artsumetsu, which is your Elemental Burst, which will provide about a 15% damage increase, typically, depending on like what you look at. C4 is probably the biggest upgrade because of it would provide a 30% damage upgrade, and this is pretty much the sweet spot for Constellations and where to stop on Ayaka. If you're wondering where to stop, it's about C4. The C5 doesn't really improve your damage that much for your overall DPS, and the C6 is basically just for show, and it's really good to pair with Shenhe, but typically you're not going to be using the damage because the enemies will be dead before you can even utilize the C6. That's going to do with this video. Hope you enjoyed this brief Ayaka updated guide. I hope it was really helpful and get you all the information you actually need for Ayaka. Let me know if you have questions about Ayaka in the comment section down below. You have a wonderful rest of your day.